Welcome, everybody. This is Evanye Lawson with the Self Love Center. Today, we're going to be talking about how our old wounds manifest into illness, and this is something that I see quite often. And I want to share my experiences with you about how they've manifested for me in my life, and how I've seen in some of my clients and the work that I've done with other people, and how I've been able to highlight what is necessary for people to move forward so that they can start healing some of these wounds. And I guess I'll just start right away with telling you about my issues with my physical health and my mental health. So I grew up in a family where a lot of my voice was suppressed. I was always kind of told what to do and how to do it. I was always told how to think and how to feel. There was never really an opportunity for me to just kind of free flow in my fullest. While my parents did their very best job at allowing me to just do what I wanted to do, they also still had a little bit of rules and regulations around what is possible and what's not possible, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. If I strayed too far outside of the box, it was going to be in the unacceptable category. So I learned early on that there were parts of me that wasn't okay. There were parts of me that didn't get the opportunity to express itself fully. And so, like most of us, we grow up not even recognizing this. And then we get into relationships with friends or intimate partners, and we start to have all of these conflicts and this chaos, right? And that's what I started to notice. I didn't start dating until I was in my 20s. So I was I was probably 21 or 22. I was in my early 20s. And so most people start doing that when they're in high school or middle school. That was just not my experience. And so when I got to be at that age, I remember one of the professors, because I was getting my bachelor's in psychology, and I remember one of my professors told me, "You will recognize your family's dysfunction the minute you get into an intimate relationship." And I was like, what does she mean by that? Like, what does that even mean? And I knew nothing about it. So I turned 21 or 22, and I get into my very first relationship that lasted for about 4 years. And I took on the same patterns that I did as a younger child in that relationship, which was because I was too afraid to speak up for myself and to share my truth, because I was too afraid that I was going to be mean or hurt the other person's feelings. I just kept it inside. I didn't say anything. I didn't try to rock the boat. I didn't try to create any conflict. I was just like, okay, we're this happy couple. Everything is fine. Because on the outside, things were perfect, just like my family. But on the inside, I had all these different emotions that I really wanted to express, and all these different thoughts that I really wanted to come out of my mouth, but I just didn't know how to do it. And so my natural defense mechanism was to shut down and withdraw, and then to turn the pain onto myself, which was to be self inflicting or self criticizing, self judging. I also struggled with eating, so I didn't eat. I would starve myself. I would get so stressed out that food was not even a top priority on my list. All of these things were happening over and over and over again. And the person that I was with was confused. They were allowed to do what they wanted to do. They were allowed to say what they wanted to say. They were allowed to be who they were without any cares or any constraints. And I didn't understand why that wasn't true for me. And then we go fast forward, I get into the end of that relationship. And by the end of this relationship, I had started developing ulcers. My hair had started falling out in the middle of my head. I remember taking out clumps. Like, clumps would be falling out in the shower. And I would be like, oh my God, what's going on with my hair? I just thought I had heat damage, or like my hair was deficient or something. I was like, well, maybe I'm just not eating right. My neck started hurting. I started getting these neck issues. I started going to a chiropractor consistently over and over again. He kept saying, every time I adjust your neck, I don't know why when you come back, it's not adjusted anymore. And so he was always trying to get this in balance. And at that time, I had decided, okay, it's time to seek a therapist. Let me go and get some therapy. And that's when I was first introduced to the concept that my emotions were causing my illness. I had no clue what was happening. And I was in the space of deciding, do I stay in this relationship or do I go? I wasn't happy. I wasn't able to express myself. I wasn't able to say what I wanted. I just knew that something just wasn't right. I was like, I don't want to get married to this person because that's just not what I want. And I remember my therapist saying to me, your neck is hurting because you're having a hard time deciding which way to look in the relationship. And it made so much sense to me. And I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean I'm having a hard time looking? And I thought about it. He's saying that because I was having a hard time making a decision about whether to stay or to go, what to say or what not to say, how to say it and how not to say it, what to do and what not to do, that was creating all this stiffness in my neck that even my chiropractor couldn't release from me. And then my stomach started being attacked because I wasn't allowing something to come up out of my throat. Our truth lives not only in our heart, but it lives in our stomach too. And we'll get more into that as we talk. But my truth was burning a hole so tight in my stomach that it was creating a lot of discomfort. I remember going to a gastroenterologist, which is someone who takes a full assessment of the digestive tract. And they did what's called an endoscopy, where they went in and they scoped my stomach. And they said, okay, you have a duodenal ulcer. And it was a bleeding ulcer, and I had just one. And I remember that being my last straw. I didn't care that my hair was falling out. I was like, it's gonna grow back, no big deal, whatever. But my stomach had created this hole that now needed to be repaired by medication, or my duodenum rather, not my stomach, but my duodenum, which sits right above the stomach, um, was creating this hole inside of me because I continued to swallow my truth. I continue to swallow my feelings. I continue to swallow my emotions. I continue to swallow my own thoughts. Instead of regurgitating them or bringing them up, I just sat on them. And when you sit on an emotion, a thought, or the truth of who you are, it is going to try to find a way to get out. So that was the biggest part of my issue. And then later on, I got into other relationships and I kept getting all of these yeast infections over here, yeast infections over there. I could not figure it out. So, this is the second part of the story. I remember the first time I had never had yeast infections before or UTIs. I never had any issues like that. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm pretty healthy. This is cool. And I remember the first time I had it, I was like, oh my God, did I get an STD or something? I was completely freaked out. So I go to the doctor and the doctor tests and she's like, oh, it's just a yeast infection. And I said, but it's happening over and over and over again. She couldn't find anything wrong. We did every STD panel, we did everything in the book. She said the only thing to do is just get on antibiotics and to reset something. I couldn't remember what she said, but I chose not to do that because I was like, nah, I don't want to reset anything. I'll just, you know, uh, I'll do the regular monostat. And so she gave me prescribed monostat. I can't remember. It's a I forget the name of the medicine inside of the monostat, but she gave me a prescribed one of those, and that took care of everything. And then a month or so would go by, and then it would start over again. I'd get back on the same regimen and keep doing the same things over and over and over again. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, thank you, Katie. Metron I Dazzly. Girl, I don't even know how to say that word. That's the medicine in it. So it kept happening over and over and over again. And I was like, what is going on? And so by this time, I had learned about uh, emotions creating illnesses. And so I had done some studies and I had already done some research around this. And so I couldn't for the life of me figure out why this continued to happen. And what I started doing was going inside of myself in meditation and like literally just sitting and asking the question, figuring out what was going on. And I couldn't get anything. I was like, how are people doing this? Like they say you're supposed to just go inside of yourself, sit and start asking questions. How are you supposed to know this information? What am I supposed to be hearing? So I couldn't hear anything. And then I remember a book that I had read a year or two prior, which is by Louise Hayes, and it's called Heal Your Life. And that's one of the books that I'll recommend to you, and I'll go ahead and say it now. It's an amazing book if you're looking to go ahead and start shifting your old emotions and your illnesses. Then this is a great book for that. But I remember reading that book, and I went to the part where it talks about yeast infections and female issues and all of these different things. And a lot of it was just saying the same thing over and over again, which is you have a lot of anger and hurt about being feminine. I was like, what does that mean? So here again, I was kind of stuck. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how it was supposed to unfold. And so I just was like, okay, I'm going to keep doing the same routine. I'm going to start cleaning up my diet. Because I was not about to get on antibiotics. I was like, okay, I'm going to clean up my diet. I'm going to do more meditation. I'm going to do more relaxation. I'm going to journal. Like I was like super gung ho for the self-care route. And while it was helpful, it still didn't give me the relief that I was looking for, because what I was missing was the part of me that didn't understand. I didn't know what my issues were. I didn't know where it was coming from. And it wasn't until one day, just kind of out of the blue, I I remember sitting and I remember thinking like, okay, I think I understand where this is coming from now. And this has happened after multiple yeast infections, after yeast infections, after yeast infections, after yeast infections, after yeast infections. And I remember being in my room, and I always have my journal because I'm always journaling. I think journaling is one of the most important ways to really process your emotions. And I started writing, and like I do, I just kind of freestyle. I don't know what's about to come out. I just was writing. And all of a sudden, I just remember asking myself the question again, just to see if it would come up, anything. I was like, okay, what is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to teach me? And the answer that kept popping up for me was that my body was rejecting um, the, I don't know how to explain it. Okay, so the people that I was having sex with, my body was rejecting their energy, meaning that we were not aligned value wise. We were not aligned spiritually wise. We were not aligned emotionally. So I was having sex with these people who were not in alignment with me and my spirit and what I wanted. There were parts of me that I was silencing just to make this other person or other beings happy. There were parts of me that I wasn't saying, and there was doubt, there was fears, there were all these things that I allowed to just sit in my body and still go ahead and have a sexual experience anyway, because these yeast infections were happening after a sexual encounter. So they weren't happening just kind of out of the blue either. They were happening, which is why I said I wanted to do an STD test. And when I started recognizing that, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, that's the answer. I'm not actually, I'm just kind of going with the flow. I'm not saying what I really want to have happen in this sexual experience. I'm just allowing this thing to happen that I really don't like, or I really don't care, or I'm just having sex just to please the other person, not really just for my own personal enjoyment. And so when I started making that conclusion in my head and started understanding that, it went all the way back to, again, me as a kid being told what to do and just going along with the flow and not opening my mouth. I was like, oh, that's what's happening. And so the minute I got that, I started doing my own healing work, and I started doing a lot of and I'll teach you guys what I did later on in the process as well. So I started doing all of that, and I haven't had a yeast infection in, oh my gosh, I don't know how many years. And I was able to have sex fine and have all these sexual encounters without having these weird yeast infections. And so I haven't had one. And I believe it's because I was able to get to the root of why they were started and why they were created. And I was able to actually sit with the feelings and what it was trying to teach me. And I was able to heal and learn from it. So I say all of this to say the main important component that continues to create illnesses and ailments in our bodies is through one thing, and it's one thing. This one thing is called suppression. We live in a culture where suppression is okay. We have um, we have professions and organizations and a whole government and media system where everything is built on suppression. Suppression is just another word for I don't have the ability to be free. And the minute you don't have the ability to be free, you automatically hold tight on the part of you that is not allowed to be free. You swallow it down, you press it down, right? You press it all the way down. And then for some of us, we tend to forget about it or we deny that it exists. Or some of us, we just say we don't want to talk about it and we don't even want to think about it and we just kind of keep it pushing. These are all forms of suppression. Suppression is the most dangerous thing that we have created in our culture because it does not allow the parts of us that need to be free to be free. And when we aren't allowing those parts of us to be free, they're going to learn to be free in other ways, right? So they're going to create and spawn off into their own personalities, into their own little fragments, and they're going to find a way to get free. So if you're not going to be the warden that opens up the door to their jail cell, you're going to keep them locked in. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to escape. So they're going to escape and try to run their way into freedom. And this is where illnesses and ailments come about. When we suppress our stories, when we continue to hold on to old conditionings that limit our voices, we tell people we don't feel a certain way when we really do. We continue to um, act like we don't have problems when we really do. We pretend that nothing's going on because we don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable. We don't cry because we feel like it's going to make us feel bad and we're going to be too afraid to stop crying. We don't want to be perceived as jealous, even though we might be jealous. Like all these things are based off of the old conditioning pattern that behavior, that emotion, and that thought is unacceptable. And when we believe it's unacceptable, we automatically suppress it. We keep silent about it. We keep hush hush about it. And then later on, it starts to spawn off into something bigger, something more intense. And this is where we get things like diabetes, and we get things like fibromyalgia and cancers and tumors and infections and inflammatory diseases and digestive illnesses and headaches and joint aches and backaches and mental illnesses, schizophrenia, bipolar, you name it, ADHD, anxiety, depression. All of these categorized illnesses have a place in the physical realm. But here's the thing you need to know about illnesses. They are first created on an emotional and mental level before they hit the physical. And here's how you know this to be true. We have been taught, we kind of created a society where we basically are, it's kind of like that scene or, be seen or not seen type of world where if you can see it, then it's real. If you can't see it, then it's up for question or it's not real. This is how our science has been created. Science tells us that we need fundamental proof with our own sight that it's got to be a tangible thing that we can measure in order for us to make it real. This is where statistics come from. This is where economics comes from. This is how our government is built. And we as a culture have bought into this idea that we've got to see what's right in front of us in order to be real, which is why most of us, when we feel ill or we have some sort of ailment come across, we know it's there, but we're not paying attention to what's unseen. which is sometimes maybe our adrenals are failing, or our kidneys, or all of these little organs inside of our bodies are not doing their part. They all kind of have this synchronistic thing, how they work together. And when one organ is not doing its job, it's not because that one organ's not doing its job, it's a catapult from another organ that's not doing its job. And it can all be linked together, but that's just the physical. When we look only at the physical, we're only just uncovering the tip of the iceberg. If we go deeper to see the big iceberg, we've got to recognize that all of it starts in the emotional and the mental body first. I always tell people illnesses exist out here. They exist out here, and then the minute you continue to suppress it, it just gets closer and closer and closer, and then it gets here. Starts attacking the body. And if you're someone who struggles with illness after illness after illness after illness, then this is something to pay attention to. It could be years and years and years of suppression, years and years and years of stuffing yourself down, stuffing pain down, stuffing fear, anger, sadness, grief down. When you stuff all of these things down, they have to come out somewhere. And that is what happens when we don't address our emotional issues. And sometimes the intensity of it is how you know when it, okay, let me say it differently. The intensity of our illness is a direct reflection of the amount of suppression we've done over the years. So if you've got an illness that's just strong and virile, and it just won't go away, it keeps coming back, and it comes back with force and power, and you need more and more medication to get rid of it, that's how you know that the intensity of that stuffing, or the amount of that stuffing is a lot, and it's been happening over time. Now, the question is, how do you start to get rid of this? How do you start to heal? How do you start to um, use your illness as your own awakening? And this is a little bit more challenging than others might have you believe. I think that even over throughout the years of my life, when I was still learning how to listen to my body and listen to my organs, and there were moments where even sometimes I would apply this method and I was not able to get anything. And instead of giving up, I would go back and keep trying, right? That's how I told you about the yeast infection story. I couldn't get anything the first time. I didn't know what was happening. And then months had to go by again for me to continue to ask the question. And then that's when I was able to get more clarity, because sometimes we may not have all the information right now, but the more we ask the question, that creates a thought, and it sends little synapses and little vibrations all around us to organize information to get to us, to travel to us. So everything is connected. If you want to understand that, everything is connected. So the minute you have a thought about something that limits how you should feel, or it makes you feel guilty, it makes you feel ashamed, it makes you more anxious, it makes you more sad, it makes you more angry, if that thought is making you feel trapped in any kind of way, then that thought is the thought you want to pay attention to, because that thought is the conditioning or the old story that's allowing you to create more of that illness. And so here's the first step that I really want to talk about, because it's the step in every single thing that I'll ever talk about. And that first step is creating some awareness. So awareness looks like understanding, um, well, basically identifying the symptoms. So say, for example, you might have some stomach issues. Let's take stomach issues. That's pretty common right now. Stomach issues, IBS is a popular word. So let's say IBS. So take IBS. Actually, let's break it down even simpler. Let's take bloating. Let's just do bloating in general, because I know with IBS, a lot of bloating continues to happen there too. So if you identify, make yourself aware of the symptoms, which is easy to do because it's the thing causing you the most stress and the most discomfort. Instead of choosing to suppress it by, taking a bunch of medication over and over again. So you will have to take medication. This is not, I'm not saying don't take medication. However, what I am saying is being mindful of how often you're taking that medicine. If you have a doctor that's told you this is an issue that will not go away, there is a problem that will not go away, um, I I don't ever fall for that with my doctors. I've been told there have been certain illnesses. Like I was told one time that I had IBS. I was like, I'm not buying that. IBS is just a collection of something that I haven't worked on. So they said to me, "Oh, you'd have to get on some antidepressants in order to make the stomach relax long enough to feed the motility of that stomach, basically make my stomach work." I was like, "I'm not doing that." And so what I did was, okay, let me actually figure out what is triggering the bloating of the IBS, what's triggering the cramping, what's triggering the tightness, what's triggering the pain. And what I continued to do was identify the symptoms that I was experiencing. Every time I noticed them, I charted them, I basically paid attention to when it was being flared up. And what I noticed was my symptoms were flaring up when I was really, really stressed. And stress, as we know it, tightens the body. It makes the body really, really tight. And I think a lot of scientific studies can have said this, and we can feel it in our own body. And it's because we have a thought about something that's creating stress for us that then gets channeled into how we feel about it, which is probably stressed out and afraid and anxious. And then it gets into our body and it creates a pain somewhere. And for me, it turned into this constriction of my digestive system. And so, because of that, my digestive system was in like a semi state of paralysis where it wasn't moving. So, I would eat food and the food would just sit there and sit there, and then it would ferment. And then, because of that fermentation, I was getting gas and pain and bloating and inflammation. And it was hard to have a bowel movement, or if I was having a bowel movement, it was happening too fast. So, all of these things I had to understand first what was happening with my symptoms, what was happening with my body, and when are my symptoms flaring up. Now, maybe you're someone who has these symptoms over and over and over again, and they don't just stop and they don't just flare up. Um, and that just means that that's just another sign for you to pay attention to the next space, which is encouraging and allowing. If you've done the work with me before, you will know that I always talk about how to encourage and allow something, meaning when we are in pain, again, we suppress. We go ahead, we take pills, or we distract ourselves by watching a Netflix show, or we do something. We get online, we watch YouTube, we go to a seminar, we go to a speech, we take vitamins, we take all these things, yoga and meditation. And these are all great to a certain extent, but they're only temporary for that moment. They don't take care of the actual healing piece behind it. So if you're having some symptoms that are lasting and there is no end point to those symptoms, allow. Stop resisting. Stop suppressing. What would it be like if you just allowed that symptom to be the symptom? What would it look like if you allowed that pain to be the pain? And that could look like, I'll take for example, I have been working really hard at trying to eliminate menstrual cramps. And so for the past couple of months, instead of taking an Aleve medication, I decided, okay, I'm just going to allow. And while that's not a big deal, but for me, that's a huge deal because that's the only time I take pills in my life is around my menstruation. And and so I would just allow the pain, allow the pain, allow the pain. And it is the most uncomfortable first 2 days that I could ever experience. And so allowing the pain is getting to the other side of what that pain has to offer. What if you allowed the pain to exist? What if you allowed and encouraged the pain to exist? Because what you need to understand is that the pain is what's trying to show you the lessons. So we're not created in this world to be in suffering. The pain is considered to create more empathy and more connection. And so when you're in a space where your emotions are creating all these illnesses and these flare ups, You now have to ask why what is it trying to teach you? And this is how you start doing the healing work. And it's easier said than done when you're not in a routine of doing this. It's easier said than done when you're the one experiencing the symptoms over and over again and have no energy sometimes to do these things. So I get that. And then you're the only one who is your own healer. No one else can be your healer. Your doctor can't be your healer, your nurses, your practitioners, your professionals, your therapists, your coaches. Nobody can be your healer except for you. So you're going to have to talk to the parts of you that are ailed. So, say, for example, we'll go back to my stomach. My issue with my stomach was, or not my stomach, I say my stomach, my digestive tract. My digestive tract. I wanted my intestines, my small intestines to work properly. I wanted my stomach to work properly. I wanted my kidneys and my adrenals and all of my colon. I wanted my liver. I wanted my liver to work properly. I wanted all of these things to work properly. So here's a step by step. And if you have pen and paper, I'll go ahead and spill them out for you right now. The first thing I want you to do is to talk to your body, because everything exists on an emotional, mental level. First, your brain does not know what's real and what's not real. So focusing only on the emotion, focusing only on the physical is not going to be the only thing that needs to be focused on. You have to be able to activate it from the emotional and mental standpoint. So the brain automatically recognizes sensations and energy. That's what the brain knows. The brain doesn't know that if I prick my finger, if I did it, if I told my hand that it was going to hurt, then my brain would make my hand hurt. Okay. So it starts here first. And that means that you can tell your organs what to do. And that's what I had to do with my digestive tract. I had to speak to every organ in that part of my body. And I had to ask it questions. So that's step one. Talk to your organs. Talk to your organs. And if you don't know which organs are being affected, don't worry about it. Talk to the illness itself. Say you have a cancer, talk to that cancer. Feel the cancer in your body. Feel where it sits. Feel where it is. Even if it's something simple. Back to menstrual cramps. Talk to the menstrual cramps. Feel where they are. Notice what's happening. Ask it questions. Talking to your organs looks like asking questions such as, why are you here? What are you here to teach me? Choosing to sit with those organs or that illness, just like you're sitting here listening to me speak, you're allowing those organs to speak back to you. Let those organs tell you what they want to tell you. And one of the most important questions is, what are you here to teach me? What are you here to teach me? How can I learn from you? Why are you showing up in my life? Is there something that you need? How can I support you? Like, you can ask it any questions. You can be like, what color are you? Do you have a name? Do you have a voice? Do you have a texture? Do you have a temperature? You can ask it any question you want. There is no wrong question. There is no wrong question. There is no wrong question, okay? Because I know that a lot of us can get into a judgmental space about I got to do it right. I'm doing it wrong. There is no wrong way to do this process. Talk to your organs and ask it questions. That is the first step. The second step is to allow and listen. Once you talk, now you've got to sit back and listen. Sit back and listen. I am not someone who can remember everything that I hear, so I have to write it down. So if writing it down in a journal is going to be helpful for you, cool, write it down in a journal. But if you're someone who can remember it, great, write it down. But allow and listen. That's the second way. And then the third way is to always show gratitude. We do not show ourselves enough gratitude. We don't show ourselves enough love. It's easy for us to do it for other people, But when it comes to ourselves and to the pain and the parts of us that we don't like, we don't feel we don't typically feel grateful for it. We're like, "Oh god, this is a burden. I'm tired of this." Because that's what suppression has taught us. Suppression has taught us that there are parts of us that are completely unacceptable or wrong, and it should not be set free. And because of that, we continue to deny it, push it down, suppress it even more. And by allowing and encouraging your symptoms to be just as they are, you are now affirming them by giving them the gratitude that they need. They're just like us. They love positive energy. They love positive feedback. They love love. So provide a sense of gratitude as the third step. So the first step again, talk to your organs. Ask them questions, especially what they're here to teach you. The second step is to allow and listen. Listen to what they have to tell you. Don't judge them. Don't deny them. Don't sit there and believe like, well, I'm just making this up. This is not me talking. Don't do that. Allow. And the third step is to show gratitude. These are the ways to really, really start healing. Now, for some people, it can take years to do the healing, especially if you have multiple illnesses on top of multiple illnesses, especially if they're complex. And that's okay. None of this is a quick fix. This is not the quickest solution. Suppression teaches us again that we have quick fixes. And that's why we have all these temporary things in our world that teach us that we can be okay for the moment. And that's actually fine. But if you're looking for long term gain and long term support, you are going to have to really talk to your organs. And that's what we're going to move into for our chakra balancing system today, our healing session. We're going to talk to our organs. We're going to allow our organs to release. And you get a chance to hear me as I basically tell the organs what to do. Know this, you are in control. You are the creator of your own reality here. So that means not only are you the creator of your space, you are also the creator of what's going on in your body. You can activate systems in your body. You can tell certain systems to do what you want to do. You can tell them to operate in a full healing way. So with that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. All right. Peace, you guys.